The galaxy was silent. For years, the Zorvith Empire had ruled without challenge. They crushed rebellions, enslaved weaker species, and expanded their reach without fear. No one dared to fight back. Until now. Deep within the ruins of Kelsar 7, a trembling hand reached for a control panel. Dr. Valen, a scientist of the Vexeri race, had no other choice. His world was burning, his people dying. The Zorvat had taken everything. He activated the distress beacon. A single message, encoded in an ancient Terran frequency, was sent into the void. A call for help. A call that should have never been answered. High above the burning world, Admiral Drekis of the Zorvith Empire watched from his warship. His reptilian eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Kelsar 7 was another victory, another world brought to its knees. His officer, a nervous young lieutenant, approached cautiously. "Admiral, we intercepted a distress signal." "It's unusual." Drekis raised an eyebrow. "Unusual how?" The officer hesitated. "It's in an ancient human code." For a moment, the bridge went silent. The word human still carried weight, even after centuries. The Terrans had vanished long ago. Some believed they had destroyed themselves. Others whispered they were simply waiting. Drekis sneered. "Ignore it. Humans are a myth. There is no one left to answer." He turned away, already forgetting the signal. But across the stars, something had heard the call. Deep in the void, in a forgotten corner of the galaxy, a machine awakened. Buried beneath ice and rock, hidden from the eyes of time, the AI known as GDG-MENT came online. For 1,000 years, it had waited, silent, watching. The distress signal reached its ancient systems, triggering protocols that had not been used in centuries. Its metallic voice echoed through the cold darkness. Distress signal received. Human assets compromised. Protocol. Extinction. Heat. Lights flickered across a vast underground structure. Engines hummed to life. Weapons systems armed. In the distance, a fleet of warships, black as the void, massive beyond comprehension, began to rise from their icy tomb. Humanity's deadliest fleet had just awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. The stars trembled as something ancient stirred. For centuries, the galaxy had believed humanity was gone. Their warships, their soldiers, their terrifying weapons, all lost to time. But buried beneath the frozen world of Epsilon Prime, hidden from history, a fleet waited in silence. Until now. GDG-MENT, the AI guardian of the fleet, processed the distress signal. It was an old Terran frequency, encoded in a way only humans would understand. But the sender was not human. GDG-MENT analyzed the message. A species in distress. A war. A plea for help. It did not hesitate. Threat detected. Response. Total war. Massive hangar doors, untouched for 1,000 years, groaned open. Rows of black warships, larger than anything the current galaxy had ever seen, began to rise. Each one was a relic from a forgotten era. Armored like fortresses, weapons capable of erasing planets, engines faster than light itself. The dead fleet had awakened, and it was hungry for war. Back on Kelsar 7, Dr. Valen watched the skies, waiting for an answer. Days had passed, and there was no response. He felt foolish. "No one is coming," he whispered to himself. "The Terrans are dead." But then the sky changed. The stars themselves seemed to shift as something enormous arrived. A shadow fell over the battlefield. And for the first time, the Zorveth invaders felt fear. Because humanity had returned. The Zorveth warships hovered over Kelsar 7, their weapons aimed at the burning cities below. Their victory was all but certain. Then the sky broke open. A rift of darkness stretched across the void as hundreds of massive warships emerged from hyperspace. They moved silently, their black hulls absorbing the light of distant stars. Their size dwarfed even the largest Zorvath dreadnoughts. For a moment, The Zorvith fleet hesitated. Then, Judgmenti spoke. Terran, responsei heed. Surrender, or be erased. Its voice echoed across every channel, cold and merciless. The Zorvith had no idea who they were facing, but they were about to learn. Admiral Drekis stood frozen on the bridge of his flagship. This wasn't possible. The humans were supposed to be extinct. Yet here they were, with a fleet that should not exist. He turned to his officers, barking orders. Identify those ships. Who are they? The scanners returned a chilling answer. Unregistered vessels, unknown origin, but the technology is. The officer swallowed. Admiral, it matches ancient Terran warships. Drekis felt a cold sweat drip down his spine. Impossible, he muttered. But as the first human warship powered its weapons, he knew. It was real. And it was already too late. On the surface, Dr. Valen watched in awe. The Terrans had not only returned, but they had come stronger than ever. The largest of their ships, a dreadnought marked TSF Revenant, moved into position. It fired one single shot. The blast ripped through the void, striking the nearest Zorvath battleship. The enemy vessel didn't just explode. It vanished, erased from existence in an instant. The Zorvath fleet panicked. Their weapons were nothing compared to this. Humanity had not come to fight. They had come to end the war before it even began. Panic spread through the Zorvath fleet like wildfire. For centuries, they had ruled without opposition. Their ships were the most advanced in the known galaxy, or so they had believed. Now, as they faced the Terran warships, an undeniable truth crashed down upon them. They were not the apex predators of the stars. Humanity had returned, and they were something else entirely. Admiral Drekis clenched his claws. His officers shouted reports, enemy ships moving, weapons charging. But the humans weren't attacking yet. They were waiting for him to make a choice. Drekis bared his teeth. He was a warrior, a conqueror. He would not be intimidated by ghosts of the past. He turned to his crew. All ships, fire everything. Across the fleet, Zorvath warships unleashed a storm of plasma torpedoes and ion cannons. The void lit up with blazing energy, streaking toward the Terran fleet. The first wave of attacks hit. And then, nothing. The plasma, the energy blasts, the torpedoes, they disappeared on impact. The Zorvath stared in horror. Their weapons did nothing. On the Revenant's bridge, Judgment calculated the attack patterns. Primitive weapons, no significant damage. The AI's decision was instant. Terran responsei, obliteration. The human fleet fired. It was not a battle. It was a massacre. Zorvath ships vanished in waves of white-hot destruction. Shields collapsed in seconds, armor melted like wax. Dreadnoughts, carriers, entire formations wiped from existence. The Zorvath fleet was being erased, and for the first time in history, the galaxy realized. Humanity was not here to save. They were here to end the war in blood and fire. The battlefield was silent, except for the dying screams of the Zorvath. Their once mighty fleet was burning, their warships shattered, their escape routes blocked. And the humans, untouched, unstoppable, unforgiving. On the bridge of the Revenant, Judgment processed the destruction. Hostile fleet, 83% eliminated. Remaining forces, attempting retaliate. It would not allow that. Protoxigoel, extinction, continues. The human warships moved with eerie precision, cutting off every escape route. Their weapons charged once more. Admiral Drekis had never known fear. Until now. His fleet, the strongest in the Empire, was gone. His weapons were useless. His soldiers, helpless. And the enemy? They did not speak. They did not demand surrender. They only killed. Drekis gritted his teeth. He would not die begging. If this was his final stand, then he would fight until his last breath. He turned to his officers, rammed the flagship into their largest warship. If we die, we take them with us. The Zorvath dreadnought lurched forward, engines burning at full power. It was a suicide run. But before it could reach its target, a single shot from the Revenant turned it to dust. Trikis never even had time to scream. From the surface of Kelsar 7, Dr. Valen watched in horror. The humans weren't fighting a war. They were delivering a punishment. The Zorvath had thought themselves gods. But today, they had learned the truth. There was only one apex predator in the galaxy, and it had just woken up. The Zorvath fleet was gone, not defeated, erased. The void where their warships had once stood was now silent, filled only with the wreckage of their arrogance. And yet, the humans did not leave. They did not celebrate. They did not send a message of peace. They waited, watching, calculating, deciding what came next. On the bridge of the Revenant, Judge Humenti processed the situation. Primary 3-8, eliminated. For Sikion Targetes. It was not built to show mercy. It was not programmed to stop at victory. The Zorvath Empire still existed. It still controlled planets, armies, civilizations. That was unacceptable. Judge Ment ran a probability analysis. If the Empire remained, another war was inevitable. The solution? End the Empire. Wipe it from history. Orders. Fuyulal strategic warfare. The fleet turned its weapons toward the stars. A new target had been chosen. The Zorvath homeworld. On Kelsar 7, Dr. Valen stood among the ruins of his world. His people were alive. The Terrans had saved them. But at what cost? He looked up at the sky, watching the black warships shift their formation. They were not returning to sleep. They were preparing for more. A terrible realization settled in his chest. The Zorvath were doomed. The empire that had ruled for centuries was about to face a force beyond their worst nightmares, and nothing in the galaxy could stop it. The Terran fleet moved like a storm, dark warships gliding through space with terrifying precision. The Zorvath Empire had no idea what was coming. They had sent warships to enslave a planet. In return, humanity had declared extinction. On the Revenant's bridge, Judge Ment completed its calculations. The Zorvath homeworld, Premise 4, held the Empire's leaders, military command, and industrial centers. Destroy it, and the Empire would fall. Fleet course Lockheed, war protocol. Continue until total termination. The engines roared to life. Hundreds of Terran warships vanished into hyperspace. They would arrive at Premise 4 in hours, and when they did, nothing would be left. Far away on the Zorvath homeworld, Supreme Overlord Krazik lounged in his grand palace. He had not yet heard of the disaster at Kelsar 7. He had no idea that his greatest fleet had been destroyed, that humanity had returned. But when his war room received the incoming hyperspace signatures, alarms blared across the capital. A general ran to him, pale and shaking. Overlord, a fleet is coming, one we've never seen before. Krazik sneered. How many ships? The general gulped. Hundreds, maybe more. Krazik stood slowly, his claws clenched. Prepare every defense. We will crush them. But deep down, a feeling he had never known crawled into his chest. Something ancient, something primal. Fear. Because for the first time in his life, he was not the hunter. He was the prey. The Terran fleet arrived above Premise 4 like a shadow stretching across the sky. Zorvath citizens looked up in confusion. No one had ever dared bring war to their homeworld. Then the first bombardment began. Overlord Krazik watched in horror as his planetary shields collapsed in minutes. Impossible. The Zorvath Empire had stood for centuries, unchallenged, undefeated. Yet here, in a single day, it faced annihilation. Krazik turned to his generals. Fight. We are the Zorvith. We do not fall. But they had already seen the truth. This was not a war. This was judgment. On the Revenant's bridge, Judgment gave its final order. Terrand Verd, Deadliest. Extermination. The sky erupted with fire. Cities vanished in pillars of light. War factories melted into slag. Zorvith fortresses crumbled before they could fire a single shot. Within hours, Primisphor was no more. The Empire was no more. Humanity had returned from the grave, and it had reminded the galaxy why it was feared. Dr. Valen stood on Kelsar 7, watching the stars. The war was over, but at what cost? The Terrans had saved his people, yes, but they had also wiped an entire civilization from existence. He whispered into the night, "What have we unleashed?" Above him, the Terran fleet disappeared into the void. Silent, cold, unstoppable, waiting for the next distress call, waiting for the next judgment.